Thank you for joining us for another episode of Attribution Nation. In this current series, we're stepping into the C-suite to hear directly from CMOs navigating today's most complex marketing challenges. From AI disruption to the age-old alignment battles with sales, we're going to unpack the real reporting and data problems that leaders are solving and the ones that are still keeping them up at night. So join us for some candid conversations that go beyond metrics into the strategies, experiments, and lessons that are shaping the future of marketing leadership. In today's episode, I am joined here by Ed Breault, the CMO at Malbek, which just happens to be my favorite type of wine. And Ed, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate you taking the time to share your experiences with us. So we'll get right into it. Ed, just before we get into any specifics, just give us a little bit of a background on you and your career and how you got to where you are now today at Malbek.
Thanks, Drew. Yeah, I mean, the topics that you put out there today are near and dear to my heart. Data, all things outcome-driven marketing. So yeah, thanks for bringing me on the show. So marketing is, a passion, a career. Have been doing this for multiple decades now. Got my start actually in nuclear energy and then into the world of consulting, Big Four consulting. Doing Big Four consulting, just loved complex problems and found myself into doing some digital transformation work in marketing specific functions, and then got into martech. For a while there, was a marketer, a CMO at a martech company. And then kind of recently, it's been a couple of years now, but made a transition into contract technology or legal technology at Malbek, which brought me here, which I think is just a wild world that I didn't realize how cool contracts could be and the technology applied to it, like AI and machine learning and all the various use cases that we can now have with these just wondrous technologies, super powerful technologies applied to, the business around us.
Okay, that is definitely a first for the podcast. I don't think we've ever talked to anybody that worked in nuclear energy before. So you definitely win an award for that. So, Ed, when we were talking in our prep call, you mentioned that, you've kind of transitioned between roles where you're focused on where you're kind of like in a growth mode, and then also roles where you're in like a really like hyperscaling mode. So when an organization transitions from growth to hyperscaling, how does that change the role of marketing? First,
we need to understand marketing's purpose. And if we could start by visualizing revenue, that's really where you start, because this revenue, the visualization model is you apply it differently based on objectives. So if there's like this new revenue out there, which are not yet customers, it's your TAM, it's your ICP, it's that theoretical set of revenue accounts out there to go grab. That's new revenue coming in. Now, what are you doing now? You're creating customers which are also monetizable to generate revenue. So if you don't have customers, well, your objective is to go acquire them. Once they're acquired, you bring them in, you make them wildly successful. And then your new mission there is to reduce the cycle time on a revenue transaction of the customer base. Doing things like expansion, selling into parent accounts, selling into new lines of business. All these monetizable units are demand units is what we like to call them. You bring them in, you create a whole inventory of monetizable demand units that then you grow. You apply various different tactics and various different messaging, different playbooks to existing customers than to new customers. And so based on growth mode versus hyperscaling, you need to grow your customer base, and then you have all this transactable unit volume that you can now go and apply revenue plays to begin growing. And there's different tactics to very different channels, and as you said, very different metrics and data you're collecting, different goals you're setting on each, and then oftentimes different customer acquisition cost associated with generating that new revenue.
So you mentioned something that I want to just dig into a little bit here, which is you mentioned that there's a different playbook for new business versus expansion. And I think this is something that a lot of organizations struggle with, particularly marketing organizations struggle with how do we market for expansion specifically? Because like marketers are conditioned from day one to go out and find new customers. Like that is the most basic part of marketing. Everybody in marketing understands that. Expansion's a different animal. So how do you at Malbek approach marketing for expansion differently than you approach marketing for new customers? And this doesn't have to be measurement or metric specific. I'm just talking grand level. Like, how do you differentiate it? What's the difference between the playbooks?
Yeah, I think the first thing is getting to the model. We had that, just talked about that sort of visualizing revenue, how it's created. So once they become customers, like mission number one is to make them wildly successful as quickly as possible. And so I'm in the business of SaaS. So on the platform with my customer success organization. So hitting a toll gate of value where they're wildly successful and, hey, the data we said we were going to aggregate and collect for you to show the results of the business outcomes, we've achieved that. We've unlocked, I call it permission to then go and run an expansion play on the business. That's an internal conversation inside Malbek. So working with our CX organization, we're looking at things like go live. We're looking at NPS. We're looking at relational NPS. We're looking at user NPS. We're looking at adoption metrics. Once we see those things, then if we're inserted, let's say in a department or a region, a country, a business unit, a parent account or a child account of a subsidiary, what we're then doing is we're saying, okay, we have this living, breathing advocate of our brand that can literally go through the organization and do reference selling for us. So what we then do is we model out in our CRM. If it's not in the CRM, it doesn't exist. Don't bring me spreadsheets. So we're in Salesforce. We use Salesforce, and we're modeling out the total customer footprint, and then sort of hotspots of where we are active, where our technology is being used. And if you build technology from a PLG perspective, your product, once it's inserted, it can grow on its own. So they're adding users, and you have to be able to detect users when they're added, different departments that are unlocked. Now you're at the user level. So you've got your net new prospects, you've got your customers, and now you have a user strategy so that those belly buttons now of users become monetizable, transactable. So then you find out where you're growing from a product-led growth perspective. Then you map out from a sales-led growth, where do we want to create expansion campaigns? Maybe we're going to go over to up into the parent account, and we're going to actually work with our advocate inside the organization. Maybe there's organizations that are so disconnected that we need to rely on traditional marketing, account-based marketing tactics, like emails and our AI agents to go after these contacts in the various different buying cycles. So you have it modeled. You understand where there's, I call them tokens left in the account to go transact. Those tokens can represent, $5,000 in car, $25,000 in car, whatever think about like your business, your ASP, sort of the cost of then acquiring it. And then you've got your sort of gas oil mixture of expansion understood, and then you start deploying those tactics. Whereas you take some of the same fundamentals of modeling your ICP accounts, but now you've got the added challenge of a dark funnel that exists out there. So these are accounts that are in your ICP, not necessarily in your CRM. You've got intent data that's adding up on these accounts that you've got modeled you're listening for. And now you have all this, machination, AI agents going to win net new. It's a different play. It's a different message. They don't know you here. They know you here, and you have a much more like trusted opportunity to grow revenues. So it's pretty much how things are quite different. And it's much easier, you could talk to many people. It's much easier to grow revenue from an existing customer than it is winning over a whole net new. So your cycle time to revenue here on the customer side of the equation is much faster, and therefore you can create faster transactable moments, microtransactions, right? From a land and expand perspective, and then just continue to grow and snowball your revenue on your customer base. Meanwhile, you're feeding the units into your pool of customers, and those customers have all these users. You now then go and create great relationships and do other great things like ratings and reviews and customer substantiated testimonials out there on your G2 and your Trust Radius and your Gartner Peer Insights. That then feeds the net new, right? Back to nuclear energy. It's the fission chain reaction of revenue.
All right. I love that you got a nuclear reaction reference in there.
I had to put it in there for you. Yeah.
Love it. Okay. Thank you for diving into that. I think that's something that it's just, we hear a lot of organizations that struggle from a marketing standpoint of how to market for expansion versus new business. So thank you for expanding on that. I think that was really interesting. Now, kind of back to like the differences between growth phase and hyperscaling phase. From a measurement standpoint, what are the differences in the way that you track success in growth versus hyperscale?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that won't change, let's get those understood, which are marketing's revenue contribution to the business. And I look at it as, the inputs of sales. Marketing's the leading indicator of sales. Sales is the leading indicator of CX. CX is the leading indicator of wildly successful customers. So it's really sort of moves through a factory floor like that. And marketing's job is to go out there, like you said earlier, acquire new customers, create the pipeline. So our goal, our metrics that we typically like to have good unit economics of our business for our sales-led growth side is 3 to 5x pipeline quota coverage for our reps. That we also have PLG within Malbek too. So our product can literally sell itself. You can go out there, you can transact, but that's a sort of a different play altogether. But you're going to market with both. The first thing that we're talking about is from a company perspective, what's our revenue targets? What's our growth? What's the cost of that growth going to be? What are the efficiency unit economics that we need to maintain at our business at a certain stage of it? And then putting together very strong understanding of market fit and ideal customer profile definition, personas, all of the, pretty much the table stakes understanding of your potential customer base that you're going after. Then what I did was 9 years ago, when I couldn't answer questions from my board with a previous company, we were acquired. It was private equity. Every board meeting, they asked the same question: Ed, what's your TAM? How many deals are out there in market at any given time? How many deals are you in? After a few board meetings of being unable to answer that question, I had to go find data that would tell me that. And that's where, I started with market data. The next level of market data is market data, market accounts that are in market. So that's where intent data came out, right? So that's we're in a decade of intent right now is what I like to say. So went out there and modeled the theoretical market that we had, narrowed it down to the ideal customer profile segments of the market data. So bought all the market data, then created all the segments of potential, even broken down by industry or, revenue, et cetera, that we wanted to go after. Then began to put on the, marketing automation that would scale up to, reaching those accounts when they triggered, when they said they were in market, and then leveraging that automation. And now, like, sort of fast forward to today, I put AI agents out there doing that work that scales. Then having the scalable levers out there working, automation, AI agents, all the martech that we can throw at it. Then we have sort of that human layer of you heat up the market, it creates some level of brand awareness or knowledge. Then the next stage is you have accounts that are now putting their digital fingerprints or showing digital body language with your brand. That could be on your own digital properties, on second-party sites, second-party data like G2. You get the triggers, you get the alerts, bring those over. You can then go, sort of create a hypothesis of who the buying center is. And then sort of you heat up the market, you heat up the accounts, you build the brand in a scalable fashion. Then you have another part of my team is our business development team. These are humans. Their job is to do deeper research and create more strategic messaging on our ICP accounts. We're in the enterprise, so 500 million and up is where Malbek likes to go, but we also can go down into the mid-market, less scalable down there. I usually leave that for the AI agents to then more warm up as you sort of come down the demand funnel, and then creating those transactions from an aware account to an engaged account where they want to have a commercial conversation. They realize I have a pain, Malbek can solve the problem. So pain points meet gain points meet, I'm actually ready to talk about my situation with sales. So that's what 90%, like they're already 90% down the line before they want to talk to sales to talk to a human. So within that, that's whether you're in growth mode or hyperscaling. Hyperscaling, you need AI layers. I call it the full-time equivalent is dead. People like to say stuff's dead. I just hated saying that myself, but it's really FTAI. So full-time AI equivalent. So now, you combined, I'm sorry, FTAIE is what it would actually be. So full-time AI equivalent is you take your MDR capacity or your BDR capacity or your sales person capacity, add on component for how AI is going to give them exponential characteristics in this bionic team, if you will. You get the machines and the humans working together. Now, what you want to do here is realize and respect the humans. Human can't scale. The only way to scale humans is to put another human in there. So to get another human FTE. But now if you look at the AI, the capabilities, all the technology that's unlocked a new capacity metric of my inside sales organization, BDRs, MDRs, or even our enterprise sales reps, you can now have them tackle more business. So when I got back to 3 to 5x pipeline quota coverage, now we're giving them 5x pipeline quota coverage, because no longer do we accept 80% attainment rates. We want 120% attainment rates with one human FTE, because it's the real capacity is FTAIE, if you will, in that scenario.
Okay, so this is fantastic, and I've got so many follow-up questions, but I'm going to start with this one. So when I hear AI agents, it sounds like you're using AI to help qualify leads and help initiate conversations. Is that kind of how you're using AI agents in the inside sales world?
Exactly. Yeah. So
Okay.
One agent can run 5 different playbooks that we have in our right now, but those can actually scale up to maybe like 17, and they're hitting different parts of the funnel. So up here in the super dark funnel where they don't know your brand, they're not even in market. It's where you're generating demand. And the closer you come down based on intent signals, I've got a different AI agent with a different message for a different industry, for a different persona, for a different, focused problem. Yeah.
So as a measurement nerd and somebody that loves experiments, do you experiment with your AI agents? Do you have them have this AI agent has this personality and this voice and this tone, and then this AI agent over here has a completely different voice and tone and personality, and we can actually measure the effectiveness of voice, tone, and personality based on the different agents? Are you doing experiments like that?
Absolutely. So yeah, rapid.
I love it.
Yeah, A/B testing, and the new skill set is what you're talking about, which is the sort of the rapid tests, the optimization routines that your business goes through can now scale. So what does it mean to scale? It's not just scale activity and revenue, but it's the things leading towards successful outcomes, which are the optimization routines. And yeah, it gives you a chance to, in a shorter window, change one variable, go test it without, sort of blowing up your potential experience, learn from that, apply that learning, and then throttle it up throttle it up, get into another optimization routine, add more volume, and then just that sort of continuous learning, continuous scaling. That's exactly what this allows us to do, simulate these permutations that before we needed to let the sun burn and, clock run down. Now we don't need to do that. We could do that very fast on, smaller sample sets, quicker iterations.
That's super interesting to me. I think that, and maybe this is just, my perception of it, but most of the time when I hear of organizations using AI agents to do outreach, it's usually, I don't hear that they're doing that much testing and experimentation with like the voice and the tone and the personality and that type of stuff. It's usually like, we just want to be able to mass broadcast this message out to people, and we're not doing that type of testing, and we're just trying to scale the volume, not really hone in on the best voice and tone and personality. So I love that you guys are doing that type of testing and experimentation, because I don't know that everybody's doing that that's using AI agents. It's obviously going to require more human time to, inform the agents of like, hey, I want you to be this way here, but then over here with this agent, I want you to be this way, and to modify those and to really hone them in. It's going to be a little bit more effort on the humans, but still, I think that's just a brilliant way of understanding what type of messaging is going to work in the market. Because it's just, it's so much more rapid. The rate of iteration is so much faster.
Yeah. I mean, the agents now have things like tone detection. It's natural language, right? That it recognizes, it works with, produces, and can associate the tone of the person you're trying to talk with. So what's cool about, I think this is what's cool about AI is that, and people say a lot of it, but it actually lets us get back to talking, acting more like humans than, researching some account, fabricating things, speaking in structured text. That's not how brains interpret. Your brain actually needs to unstructure the text and make it more natural in how it receives it. So right now we can actually have conversational email. We can have conversational interactions. We can change the tone, and the agents can actually do that too. If you build in to your playbook things like tone detection and allow it to generate a natural conversations before the AI agent raises its hand and says, hey, actually, let's book a meeting with Lex, a human MDR, or with Casey or with Hannah, and get them involved. It sounds like you're really interested in what we have to talk about. Would it be okay if I, booked a meeting with Casey next week at 2 p.m.? It can just do it that fast.
Yeah.
I've actually had situations where they've said they wanted to talk to one of our agents, refer to them by name. And it's kind of funny. We don't have like LinkedIn profiles for our AI agents. We stop it at just the conversational level. That would just be a little bit too creepy.
yeah, it would be. So I want to transition a little bit into something else that we talked about when we first met, which was OKRs. And, we haven't talked much about OKRs on this podcast before, but I know that when you and I talked, this was something that you're passionate about. So how do you think about setting up OKRs within your marketing organization?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, OKRs, one of my favorite acronyms next to KPI, but the number one is ARR. But anyway, OKRs, absolutely love this. I've used OKRs for many, many years. I want to say that you can't be data driven if you're not outcome driven. So OKRs make an organization outcome driven, not outputs, outcomes. That's the big difference. And that takes quite a bit of brain wiring of the enterprise. So if things like if you're trying to do it departmentally, you're going to struggle with it across the organization. But when everybody does it, it's magic. Yeah, OKRs, objectives and key results for folks that don't know. The O is the objective. This thing is so exciting. Like how you define these, or this is the big, hairy, audacious goal of the year. It could span multiple years, of a quarter, etc. But this is the ultimate thing this is like success. And then your key results, these are your quantifiable metrics. So if we hit these key results, whether that's revenue or EBITDA, from a financial standpoint, that's great. But then what you're trying to become is a rule of 50 company, as an example. That would be like we like to say, when you read an OKR, when you read the objective, it's like you just drank 2 shots of espresso. It feels that good. So the best way to do it is, it's definitely top down when you've got a really strong set of leaders in place that have a vision for it and can cascade it down. I've been in those situations. I've also been in situations where the organization wasn't adopting OKRs, but marketing, it's how we ran our business. And so we started in marketing. We communicated in this fashion. We have our annual objectives that align to corporate targets. You then down departmentally, marketing, sales, product, R&D, et cetera. All your organizations now have team associated goals. So you've got total company. Now you've got team. Within there, you have sub teams. So within marketing, I would have business development. I would have demand generation. I have brand and content. I would have product marketing. How I think about the various different functions and reasons. So you have your revenue goal at the top level. Marketing has a goal for generate X number of pipeline, either by units or dollar denominated pipeline to get that 3 to 5X pipeline quota coverage. It's never a range. And, OKRs, they're very specific, high degrees of precision. And then within there, you have teams, right? So you have demand gen, who's going to run campaigns. Those outcomes will translate into engaged accounts, which will translate into customers wanting to have meaningful outcomes of commercial conversation to lead to a potential sale. So all that cascades down, and then it ladders back up. So you could see where you're supporting the organization. So at any level, whether it's L1, L2, L3, L4, I've seen L5, with complex organizations or regions, everybody in the organization, it's like this idea, radical transparency. That's one of like the key terms that's used. You create radical transparency into the outcomes we're trying to achieve, the result that's going to get us there. And then next to it is the owner, or I like to call it the cheerleader. The cheerleader of the KR is somebody who every week is measuring, hey guys, here's how we're doing. We're doing great. We're actually overachieving. We're underachieving. Here's why. Like, they're the voice of the KR. And what's important about this to create and keep an intellectually honest organization is where that individual, it could be related to what they're responsible for, how they get paid. I call it your paid or fired metrics, right? The things that you're either paid on commission or the outcomes, or if it's not happening, they're given permission to, regardless of the result, be the champion of that data, because it's all about communicating the narrative of that metric in the organization up and over and make it radically transparent. Because you now have, put your CEO hat on, you're looking at all these functions of the business. You have your financial results. You've got your 3 to 5 year strategic long range plan. You've got your board. You've got your investors that you need to communicate to. You need all this to create the narrative of the business. And then when you get into your business narrative, you can dive deep as deep as you need to in order to, give these signals of the business to your stakeholders. And when you get your entire organization behind this, it's absolutely a game changer. It's one of the coolest things I've seen. It's, if you're not using OKRs, start using them, put them in your department and just start evangelizing them. And like, who doesn't want to know what their goal is? Like, everybody on my team, whether you are here and I didn't hire you or I hired you, everybody wants to know what is the outcome they're driving toward. It gives them purpose. It gives them passion and direction.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of OKRs. We use them here. We have a Notion board where everybody puts their OKRs into the Notion board, and everybody can see what everybody's OKRs are and how we're progressing. And so again, radical transparency. It's out there. So once an OKR is set, how do you go about measuring OKR achievement or attainment? And how do you keep people accountable and keep motivating folks to push towards these outcomes?
Yeah, if you've architected your OKRs, that objective is like really exciting. It's always exciting. Sometimes the work to get there isn't so exciting. It's like if you're going to train for a marathon, that crossing that finish line, that feeling you get. But when you're doing your track workouts on Thursday or you're doing your long run on Sunday, can suck. It's the hard work, but it's that thing that you're driving towards eventually to get there. So it's a culture of calibrate on Monday and celebrate on Friday. So it's weekly, and then it's also monthly. So you'll have your sort of your weekly calibration and the outcomes you're driving toward. Monthly, you'll have your operations reviews where you have let's say it's marketing. Marketing goes, it's about 60 minutes. We go through all of our objectives, our key results, performance versus plan. And then we have stakeholders across the business all there. So they're in, I don't want to call it listen only mode, but they're not multitasking. They're listening what's going on in marketing. And then if you've architected your connections into other pieces of the business or the teams, you now have shared OKRs in a different department. So like marketing and product would have shared goals. Marketing and sales would have shared goals. So now you can see sort of like the give and take, or the leading indicators, the lagging indicators, the interdependencies that are in the organization. And the tighter those are interdependent, like the stronger the peloton at the front of the cycling pack is, and your drag coefficient goes way down. So you have department heads who own OKRs. You have the KR owned by team members, as mentioned. You're on a weekly basis updating these OKRs. You're having a weekly leadership meeting. It's called a GTM meeting we do on Mondays. Every Monday I go up there, sales is there, my executive team's there, my operations team's there, my 6 organizations there. These are the things marketing said they were going to go do. This is what they're doing. This is our performance first plan. If we're not on plan, these are the diagnostic metrics. Here's what's going on deeper and why it's not achieving, or when, because sometimes there's like seasonality, or, marketing's interesting, right? There's some lag time to get to a metric. Maybe we made some assumptions. There's a lot of assumptions that are made, and assumption-based models are meant to be wrong, and you're supposed to try to come as close as possible. And then, so it's explaining all that narrative on a weekly basis, working on a daily basis, and then putting in corrective actions. Like the best thing to find out is something's going wrong as quickly as possible and solve a smaller problem faster than, ignoring it or not seeing it is the worst. Being blindsided by, a miss in your whatever it is you're doing, sales, marketing, CX, et cetera, in your plan. So it brings that radical transparency. You now have more eyes on a problem. I like to say, sunlight is the best antiseptic as well. If you can see the problem, you can clean it up. You can clear it up, whether it's in the data. Sometimes you're reporting the wrong data, and it's actually a data hygiene problem, not a performance problem. Oh, that really sucks. Okay, let's go. Let's enrich the data. Let's cleanse the data. Let's get some better data routines in there to keep it looking good. You have to do that. I call it fitness metrics. I kind of use the marathon example, but fitness metrics of the business. It's not like, hey, I want to go out there and get an awesome sleep score. It's, I want to go out there and, do a sub-3 marathon. But the sleep score is really important. Your sleep is really important. So, are you burning the candle at both ends? Like, stop the behaviors or put in the work, or, just, we do that. And it's a culture of outcomes, and you have to be data driven to have a culture of outcomes.
I love the analogy you just used there at the end of like marathoning and then sleep scores. Because like a lot of organizations, when they look at OKRs, it's particularly organizations that are just starting to do it for the first time, they're not really sure what the relationship between the objective and the key results is. And so I think this analogy is really, really helpful, because like the analogy, the objective is run a sub 3 hour marathon. That is a big, audacious goal, right? That's a big goal. How do we get there? What are the steps that we have to do to get there? That's the key results, right? So like the key result that you just mentioned is sleep score. You're not going to run a sub 3-hour marathon if you're not getting good sleep at night. You're just not. So one of your key results is going to be tied to sleep scores. You might have another key result that is around like, you're not going to run a 3-hour marathon if you don't do the proper training. So I need to be following this training cycle, right? Every Thursday is this, every Saturday is this, every Tuesday is this, every Monday is this. And so each of those, key results are the things that get you to achieve that objective. I think I just love that analogy because everybody understands like a goal, not necessarily running a marathon, because I've never run a marathon, but everybody understands having a goal like that and then those steps that are required to achieve that goal. I love that analogy. I think what I'm hearing about the way that you measure and keep people accountable is actually mostly through this radical transparency. We're constantly talking about the OKRs. We're constantly sharing our progress. We're making that visible throughout the organization to all the external stakeholders that depend on us doing our part of the team project, right? And so your way of measuring and keeping folks accountable is really through that radical transparency and just having this front and center all the time.
Yeah, and leadership is super critical. Leadership, you set the tone to your team. They're looking at you. You're the weather. Like you're literally the weather for your team. So if the leader is calm, confident, focused, then their execution can be, they could feel good. They can execute. They're given permission to just go and they can trust that you're looking out for them. So it's really this leadership and trust equation you establish with staff and your stakeholders.
Love it. Love it. So I'd love to hear if you have an example of an OKR that helped unify your team around like marketing's contribution to revenue or pipeline or something like that. What's an example of an OKR where you're like, we nailed it and we showed this much pipeline or revenue?
Yeah, we always have, when we do OKRs, it's usually 3 and 5, and I like odd numbers. So we'll have 5 objectives. In each of those, we'll maybe have like 3, no more than 5 key results. One of the objective is always supporting the financial plan of the business. If the revenue goal is X, marketing's delivering the leading indicators that are needed 6 months out from that revenue, right? Because marketing is, there's you add in your deal cycle times, et cetera. It's nailing your pipeline contribution. So generate X number of deals through marketing channels, generate X number of deals through partner channels, generate X number of deals through analyst referrals, et cetera. So that metric, right? When you nail that metric, that's the coolest thing. And when you do it through various different motions, right? Whether I've got it broken down by inbound and ABX and account-based marketing, basically, which is a 3-tiered structure of ABX strategic at the top, which is like the most costly, the most personalized. ABX named, which is marketing 1 to few. So this could be like a cluster of accounts that look similar. That could either be through our model data or it's similar industry, like our oil and gas industry would be that. And then under there is ABX programmatic, where it's almost fully autonomous. And so I set goals at each of these levels: ABX strategic, ABX named, programmatic, and inbound. Take that number, sum it up to this is what we're going to go achieve. When you're, let's say 50, actually this quarter, we are 50% of the way through the quarter, but we're 85% of the way to achieve our quarterly goals. That's cool. And then you can say, team, we're going to crush it. We've got the leading indicators there. We're going to overshoot this thing in a fantastic way. That's wildly exciting. And then everything else just feels good.
I love those examples because they're so specific. I am a stickler for specificity and language. And I love how specific these are because it shows not just that we're going to contribute to this 5x pipeline goal, but it also demonstrates the way. So we're going at this one through the ABX program, this one through the analysts, this one through, this one through, this one through. And each methodology has its own targets and goals, and then it ladders up to the larger 5x pipeline goal. So I love how specific you make those, because it's when you make things that specific, it makes it easy to, one, go after those things, and number two, to track those things. I love measurement. So it's easy to track something when it's really, really super specific and narrow, really difficult to track something when it's big and broad and not really well defined.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to be super specific if you're expecting your outcomes to be achieved in the most honest way. And another sort of angle at that is when things aren't happening, you ask the question, show me the data. And if the answer is, well, we don't have the data, well, then that's your problem. You go get the data, bring it back. If you can't show me leading indicator data or data related to activity that creates value, that creates the outcomes you're looking for, then go back. Yeah, but you've got to be super specific. So I could tell you, okay, this unit that we brought in was related to these 5 campaigns that hit on these various channels, that we had a goal to generate $5 million of referred business from our, let's just back to the analyst, from insert, analyst here, $5 million from this analyst and referral business. Then how much are we spending on analyst relations? So I could see, $5 million in referred business. We're spending about $250,000 in our subscription fees for the analyst. And then you can sort of understand your cost, your outcomes, and then get into that question of like, what's really working for our business? What motions to generate our outcomes are there? And which one should we invest more in? So, and I also love the question too, what would happen to the business if I took $1 million away, or what would happen to the business if I gave you an extra $1 million for marketing? If you can't answer those questions, like, then you're missing opportunities. You're not as data driven as you should be.
Yeah.
You should be able to answer those questions at any given time. And it also can depend on maybe results that you're already bringing in or not. The worst thing you want to do is like pour gas on a fire that has water all over it, right? It's just not going to flame up for you. You've got to be able to ensure that those results are going to come there.
Well, Ed, I appreciate all your thoughts here. What I want to do is I want to get into some key takeaways that I've heard from this. And I think, again, this is kind of like the too long didn't listen version at the end, if anybody wants to skip ahead. But number one here is marketing for expansion is incredibly different than for net new customers. And I loved your tip. It starts with, you can't expand unless you've made them wildly successful. You've got to get them to be wildly successful, and you've got to do it fast. And that earns you the permission to essentially sell into them. I love that one. AI can help optimization by allowing you to test and iterate much faster than you would with, with humans. Like, you can iterate and test different personas and voices and tones and things like that you just can't quite iterate and test that much with humans. One of your points that I loved, that I just want to call this one out, is that you said, your quote was, you can't be data driven if you're not outcome driven. And I love that. That is a fantastic one. Listeners, write that one down, make a mental note on that one. That one's huge. And then talking specifically about OKRs and measurement and accountability, the way that you do it, I love it, because you've got a weekly cadence where you do your calibration on Monday and then your celebration on Friday. I love that calibration, celebration kind of juxtaposition there. That's fantastic. And then you repeat that on a monthly basis. You keep that going every week, and then you do a much larger look back on a monthly basis. And then ultimately, what that does is that creates this radical transparency around how everybody's performing. Just love that methodology there. Also love the analogy, again, I said this earlier, but I love the analogy of the OKR as like the objective is the marathon, the sub 3 hour marathon. And then the key result is sleep score, get more sleep, right? I think that's just a really easy way to understand those. And then lastly, I think your most recent point here was, to be truly data driven, you have to be able to answer these really critical questions. Like, if I had to take away $1 million from marketing, where would that leave us, or where should I take it away from? Or contrary, if I give you $1 million, what would you spend it on? To your point, super important to be able to understand, or to be able to answer those questions. And that's really what being data driven is all about. So Ed, thank you so much again for joining us. Really appreciate it. I think I've learned a ton from you here today, and I hope our listeners do as well. So thank you, Ed. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on, Drew.